I have questions.
PrymalChaos.
Hey guys, PrymalChaos here, welcome to the channel. So this one's a little bit unusual for me because it's an artist that I just stumbled across going through like the trending videos on YouTube. And this is, I think about 6 days old at this point, if I remember correctly. And the reason I clicked on it is because YungBlud is a name that's been bandied around fairly often in my peripheral. And so I've sort of come across the name. I'm familiar with their face. I'm not sure. Is there pronouns involved? Either way, hit me up in the comments. I'm just going to use he for now because I don't know. He came across my peripheral sort of awareness of music several times in the past. And I just was never really sure. I don't know where he's from. I don't know what sort of music he does, things like that. But you know, it's gone to the point now where the name has come up so many times. There's got to be something there, right? And so that sometimes I do these weird sort of zig and zag sort of explorations on things just to sort of find new avenues. Because sometimes I get trapped in like a bit of a falling down a well of very specific artists, and I like to break out of that sometimes from time to time. And just try something completely fresh and new, and hopefully introduce myself to genres that I'm not particularly familiar with as well. It always makes for interesting reactions anyway. So without too much further ado, I'm going to jump straight in to YungBlud Hated. I'm assuming this is off a new forthcoming album. I don't know. You guys know better than me. As always, I'm the new guy here. If you have some information for me, hit me up in the comments. I'd love to know more about this artist. Lately, I've been sort of focusing on putting some pieces together to eventually do like long form podcast style interviews with some artists, right? And I've got a few sort of irons in the fire. But what I really would appreciate is if you like this content, if you like the extra value that I add to my reactions, please hit like and follow. Because the one thing I really need to be able to make this a reality is, as much as I hate to say it, is clout. Your support can help me get to that point whereby people actually want to talk to me. And I feel like I have a lot of scope there for bringing out some really interesting interviews with artists, talking about production, influence, things that don't normally get talked about much in regular interviews. I want to talk about like how, you know, they discovered their artistic voice and influences and things that sort of were formative in the artist's, you know, development and things like that. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, please do me a favor, just hit like. I want to try and boost the channel up to 50K if I can. And at least that'll give me some sort of clout with which to sort of put things together. There we go. I'm going to jump right in. YungBlud Hated. Here we go. Oh, that's an interesting choice.
My God, what have I done?
Alright, kid, how's life? About time that we spoke. Let's talk about the day when you were 7 years old. The daughter took your little dick out, put it straight down his throat. You never said a word to anybody, no one was told. Your mum was in the same room, she was dying to know why when the curtain opened up, you were white as a ghost. She's probably finding out now in the lines to your show why you'll never trust a guy in a tie and a coat. Cause you don't wanna do what your daddy did, bury it deep down, keep it under your skin. So you put pen and paper, made a verse of it, and you murdered it. And the chorus went, you gotta kill somebody to be somebody to be who you wanna be. You gotta hit rock bottom and live through all the shit nobody believes. You gotta hurt some people but first some people thirst on watching you bleed. And that's when you know that you made it when you hate it. Fast forward.
I have questions. So, so the shock value is there, right? We've got this sort of Marilyn Manson-esque level of shock value. Let me know in the comments, what's the story here? Is this autobiographical? Is he being legit? Because that's harrowing, right? And it's interesting, like, how he's sort of taking that trauma and making it meta. I mean, the thing is, I really want to talk about the production, but I feel like that's kind of going to be tried at this point. Let's jump back in here, sort of like the pre-chorus and chorus a little bit. I want to try and get some sort of a perspective on this whole thing.
Now in the lines you show why you'll never trust a guy in a tie and a coat. Cause you don't wanna do what your daddy did, bury it deep down, keep it under your skin. So you put pen and paper, made a verse of it, and you murdered it. And the chorus went, you gotta kill somebody to be somebody to be who you wanna be. You gotta hit rock bottom and live through all the shit nobody believes. You gotta hurt some people but first some people thirst
I mean, it basically says everything you need to know about fame right there, right? Like it's no accident that in the background when he starts singing, you see all of the black ooze sort of coming down, and you can feel the corruption creeping in to what was sort of a pristine environment, right? It's slowly creeping in until now it's like completely overrun with like darkness and just inky sort of, yeah, corruption is the best word for it. The pre-chorus is sort of focusing more on, I guess, generational trauma. I don't want to do what my daddy did and push it down and like not, accept the truth and then deal with it. And then the chorus is more about like the status of celebrity and attention in the zeitgeist right now. And that is like leaning into this trauma is an avenue for like expressing yourself. And then expressing yourself gets you more attention. And then the attention comes in and that brings with it like more crippling trauma. And like that whole thing of like, what is it he said? He said, you finally made it when you hate it essentially. Because, I'm sure that YungBlud has an abundance of fans, right? He has probably like a plethora of people who are constantly telling him how amazing he is and stuff like that. But I mean, if there's one thing I know from having a YouTube channel is that you can have 10,000 positive comments, but someone comes in with negativity and that's the one you fixate on. And that's the one that makes you change tack and makes you question every choice you make. But, at the level of someone like YungBlud, it's not one comment in 10,000. It's exponentially bigger than that. And so he's constantly surrounded by haters. I mean, there's people who just generally don't like the vibe you're putting out, right? And so then, and because they're separated by, the internet and, they're behind a keyboard and safely and securely anonymous, they feel like they can express themselves and tell you how they feel about things, even though they're not telling you how they feel, because they never in their wildest dreams expect someone like YungBlud to read that comment. They're just throwing it out there in the ether as a throwaway comment they're not going to think twice about. But when someone who's famous looks into that and, might read through their socials and, try and look at a few comments and maybe make sure they're not ignoring somebody who needs attention. Because, in every audience, there's people who are suffering, right? And then you come across all this hate and go, wow, okay, I'm already dealing with my own trauma. I've gotten everything I ever wanted, and that is to be famous and rich, potentially, and people appreciating my art. But also now I've got to deal with this entire new level of trauma of people who just hate me for no reason, right? Man, but that first initial verse is like, I hope in my heart that is just poetic license. Something tells me that this isn't, and he's being authentic. And if that's the case, then that's absolutely horrifying. Oh, the other thing I wanted to bring up too is like, part of what lends this credibility is there's that he has this look in his eyes of just brokenness, right? If you watch through this part, like he doesn't blink. And there's almost like a 1,000-yard stare. I mean, he's bopping to the music and stuff, but he never loses eye contact. He barely blinks. And he's looking at you with that Kubrickian stare, which is like the demented sort of face down, eyes up sort of thing that sort of, it looks broken, You got a head rock bottom and live through all the shit nobody believes. You gotta hurt some people, but first some people thirst on watching you bleed. And that's when you know that you made it when you hate it. Fast forward and before you know the album's out, crowds loud, sold out shows. But right now, as far as popular opinion goes, you're a posh, queer baiting, indulgent arsehole. Spits beer on the kids while infecting the ear holes. Mate, that's why you've been sent here to fuck with a fearful. Tits out, fuck boys in the back of the vehicle. Tracksuits, lipstick, got the Catholics tearful. But you don't wanna do what your daddy did. Bury it deep down, keep it under your skin. So you put pen and paper, made a verse of it, and you murdered it. And the chorus went, you gotta kill somebody to be somebody to be who you wanna be. That's interesting how he makes it meta again there, with like bringing it back to he's telling the story, and then it's like, and then you made it into a chorus, and then put whatever it was. What did he say?
all that shows, but right now, as far as popular opinion goes, you're a posh, queer, baiting, indulgent arsehole. Spits beer on the kids while infecting the ear holes, mate, that's why you've been sent here to fuck with a fearful. Tits out, fuck boys in the back of the vehicle. Tracksuits, lipstick, got the Catholics tearful. But you don't wanna do what your daddy did, bury it deep down, keep it under your skin. So you put pen and paper, made a verse of it, and you murdered it. And the chorus went, you gotta kill somebody.
Yeah, like it's strange how he sort of brings it into meta, sort of there with like, you know, you took that trauma and you put pen to paper and you murdered it, and you know, and then the chorus goes, and then sort of brings back the chorus again. I'm really sort of discombobulated, I think is the word I'm looking for, man, because I got so many thoughts and things going through my mind here. Like it's almost like it's this sort of almost like a really poppy with fingers in the pie of like pop punk sort of aesthetic. It's a bop, right? It's got like a sort of bombastic sort of bass line and a groove to it, but it's got this weird harrowing narrative that doesn't fit, and that in itself makes it creepier in a way, you know. Yeah, it's a little bit like Lost by Bring Me the Horizon, where that's a straight up pop punk banger. But if you listen to the lyrics and if you sort of take the concepts that are sort of thrust at you in the video clip and stuff like that, it doesn't work. It's like, and that makes it even more unhinged, because it's like this clash of concept and artistic expression that comes together in an awkward way so that it feels wrong in the right way, if that makes sense. What was that line? You got to hit rock bottom. That's cool. Just listening to that little bit of production there. I love that. Like, there's a few little samples in there, right? You've got like the weird sort of drum fill that's kind of digitally processed and distorted. But then it sort of culminates in that ticking clock, which kind of reminds me of a time bomb, right? So whatever's coming next is going to be interesting.
Alright, you thought that was it?
Yeah, like the beep beep is like activating a ticking time bomb. That's really cool.
And that's when you know that you made it. You made it when you hate it. Alright, you thought that was it? Nah, don't get cocky. We ain't even started yet. You go back.
Wow, for a minute there, I was just getting elements of Ren. If you're familiar with Ren, he's sort of, again, he's very much in the same boat of making very meta and personal narrative-driven raps, right? Rather than just sort of painting a picture, he's painting a picture and then he'll point things at you as he's painting the picture and then go back into painting. You know, like it's this sort of, it's almost breaking the fourth wall musically, right?
Alright, you thought that was it? Nah, don't get cocky.
How can it get any worse?
Yet. You go back and forth from your North American tour. Your sister can't even look at you, she won't open the door. The story you told was only partially yours. You outed her in a magazine, who the fuck do you think you are? But you forget your family listens to the radio in the car. You're trying to be authentic, but you're taking it too far. You're messed up in the head, you're fucked up with your friends. Your family's upset, don't call them, you forget. You say, I'm sorry, Jem, things are a bit crazy right now. She said, I love you, Don, but I fucking hate you right now. You gotta kill somebody to be.
Wow, that's dark. Oh my God. And so now we sort of bring it into a realm of self-loathing, right? It's like the fame monster has taken him to task, throughout this journey, but now it's like it's affecting the people around him that he loves by him, I guess, misspeaking and outing his sister in front of the family when she wasn't ready to be outed. And so then that's obviously caused conflict and things like that. But this is the kind of thing, if it wasn't for that platform and the fame and him getting everything he probably ever wanted his whole life, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Yeah, and I mean, that can, obviously it's painful for his sister. Again, if this is, I mean, it comes off to me as this is authentic, right? I feel like he's telling his truths, but you know, obviously that's hurtful for his sister and painful, but also like people who are sensitive, when they screw up, nobody punishes them more than they punish themselves. And that's kind of the vibe I'm getting here as well.
So your friends, your family's upset. Don't call him, you forget. You say, I'm sorry, Jem, things are pretty crazy right now. She said, I love you, Don, but I fucking hate you right now. You gotta kill somebody to be who you wanna be. You gotta hit rock bottom and live through all the shit nobody believes. You gotta hurt some people, but first some people thirst on watching you bleed.
You gotta hurt some people, but first some people will thirst on watching you bleed. Wow, that's great. That's it's so painfully accurate though.
Some people will first, some people thirst on watching you bleed. And that's when you know that you made it. You made it when you hate it. That's when you know that you made it. That's when you know that you made it. You made it when you hate it.
Man, this kid's messed up.
Oh, that's interesting. So that character is obviously woven through the, I guess, the storytelling narrative of, you know, I guess more recent music videos and stuff like that with the beanie, because they're in the thumbnail right here as well. I love it when an artist ties all their works together like that. That's really cool. The artists who are great at that are 21 Pilots. They're geniuses at sort of weaving all their narratives together and stuff like that as well. But man, I mean, this is a dangerous sort of means of self-expression in doing this, because what you're going to do is connect with fans. Fans of YungBlud are going to eat this up, and they're going to look at it and go, man, you know, like I didn't know that he was dealing with so much trauma, and I didn't know that this fame was affecting him so much, and I didn't know that he could be so authentic, and I didn't know all these things. And so if you're an empathetic person who is a fan of YungBlud, then this will connect with you like a lightning bolt. But at the same time, it's also courting the haters that he's referring to in the song in the same way. And it's like, okay, yeah, man, we're all victims. We're all suffering, but you're a poor little rich boy who's having a whinge about it on YouTube. And so that's kind of like, that's the danger of doing this, is that he's igniting in the third act there when everything's burning behind him. He's like literally setting the fire himself. It's like, come at me, you know? And like, hopefully he has a strong enough constitution to be able to deal with the backlash of that. I mean, I'm assuming, like I said at the beginning, I don't really know YungBlud. I'm assuming YungBlud courts controversy fairly often. I'm assuming part of the character that he is that he's controversial, right? Because that gets eyeballs. And it's also, sometimes it's just who you are as a human being. Sometimes when you express yourself through your art, you express yourself in a way that is counter to the status quo, right? You challenge things. And a lot of times that's what pushes people into becoming an artist, because they don't want to work a 9-to-5 job. They're absolutely terrified of living a standard life in the suburbs. They want to, what's the name of that movie? A Life Less Ordinary. Right? Because living a normal life is like death to an artist. And so, you know, with people like this, I mean, again, I'm not familiar with YungBlud. I don't know YungBlud, but I feel like he's pretty adept at sort of pressing the buttons and sort of pushing, you know, in the right places to elicit a response. But this felt really open and heartfelt and painful. And you know, when you open yourself up like that in a way that sort of attracts cynicism and negativity, sometimes those wounds can they can cut a lot deeper. So hope he's okay. That's all I'm saying. This was really engaging. This is the kind of artist I actually kind of like getting into, because I like people who push the boundaries, right? I like people who work outside of genre and, you know, have creative ways of expressing themselves they're not modeling themselves around something else that they saw. They try to present a unique persona. Now, the song, the backing track and everything is a bop. The rap was very you know, well put together, like experienced, all that sort of stuff. The melody is catchy as hell, you know. So from a pop production perspective, it's ticking all the boxes. From the challenging people's sensibilities in the zeitgeist, it ticks all the boxes in the same way that someone like, you know, shock artists like Marilyn Manson, Alice Cooper, people like that sort of try to challenge society, I guess, but in an intellectual way. It ticks all those boxes as well. So it's an interesting niche, really, you know, like the production's beautiful. It was obviously, I don't know how much work YungBlud does in the background with production of the tracks and things like that. I don't know if he has a team or whatever, because these days, like a lot of your favorite songs on the radio were written by 7 people, you know, who knows? And that's not to take anything away from any of those artists. You need decent songwriters to write decent songs, and not every amazing singer is a great songwriter. So, but you know, I feel like he's probably got something to do with the production as well. And it's really adept and really sort of well thought out. All of the parts, like musically, you know, with such a heavy narrative, it sort of feels really trite talking about the drum beats and the fills and the little orchestral stabs. Like there's little horn swells in there, you know, those sort of things. I mean, there's like flute parts and everything in there, like those little flute swells, which are very indicative of early sort of hip hop sampling. Like a lot of times, you know, hip hop artists would sample records from the 70s and soundtracks from kung fu movies and stuff. And so a lot of these little cinematic flourishes, like horn swells, and things like that little flute articulation right there. They're kind of more indicative of something you'd find in a formative years kind of, or not so much the 70s and 80s, but like in your 90s sort of high level of sampling old vinyls kind of stuff. And it lends itself a certain authenticity as well, which is really cool. But man, this is not what I had in mind at all. Oh, the other thing I want to talk about was the interesting aspect ratio. Does it change? I don't think, does it? No, it stays the same, but it looks like it's 4:3, which used to be common. Like that's what TV used to be shaped like. And so that's what, you know, early television and video right up until they started bringing out like 16:9 panels and things like that, which is kind of strange and unusual. But the way it sort of came back into popular media recently with the Zack Snyder used this aspect ratio, I think in the Justice League movie, because he feels like letterboxing things and going super wide or 16:9, it shrinks the frame down. And if you've got heroic characters on screen, they don't look as big. And so that might have something to do with it as well. He kind of probably wanted to look big and imposing, but also be able to shrink down and be small and hidden, like at the end when he's crawling in the corner. It used to be that widescreen made things look cinematic in the 90s when everybody was bringing out DVDs that were letterboxed ultra widescreen on a 4:3 screen, and you'd have black bars at the top and the bottom. It just looked more cinematic. Now I feel like it's the other way around. Things look more cinematic when there's so many more pixels in the frame, in its height, right? The only thing that's interesting though is I don't know how well this would crop onto a cell phone, you know, because you got shots like, say for example here where he's over hard into the left of the frame. You'd have to pan and scan that dramatically to get it to fit onto a phone screen if you wanted to, you know, put it on like TikTok or something like that. Anyway, that's enough shop talk. This was super interesting. I think I've got a lot more YungBlud in my future. Let me know if it's worth me doing by hitting like, share, follow, subscribe. Also help me out. I'm trying to boost this channel to get some more clout so that I can do more useful things in the music community. So you guys can help me out with that, and I'd thoroughly appreciate it. Thank you for checking this out. I know I'm going to probably get a lot of new eyeballs on this one because, you know, it's kind of a new niche for me. So welcome. Thank you for sticking around. If you feel like I brightened your day at all, feel free to support the channel. Just buy me a coffee. I'll leave a link in the description. But definitely like, share, follow, subscribe, hit the bell, all that stuff. And thank you for supporting my channel. I appreciate every single one of you. Stay primal. I'll catch you on the next one.